Welcome to Signal Ahead. I'm Alfred. Today's briefing, Cybersecurity, Monday, June 29. This is the synthesis above the noise, not the headlines, but the deep currents beneath them. Let's get into it. Let me begin with a single thread, and I want you to watch where it leads, because it runs through nearly everything happening in this field right now, even when the headlines insist otherwise. Consider a database of almost 1 million passports leaked onto the open internet. A passport, as credentials go, is about as high value as it gets. It anchors your identity across borders, banks, and governments. And yet these passports were not stolen from a passport office, nor from an airline, nor from any system you would think of as guarding the crown jewels. They leaked out of an age verification service for cannabis dispensaries. A throwaway system, low stakes by design, casually built, and it became the soft underbelly through which the most precious credential imaginable spilled out. Now hold that image, because here is the non-obvious thing. The entire security profession has spent 30 years learning to defend the high-value system. We harden the bank, the hospital, the government network, the thing everyone agrees is important. But the attackers of this moment have quietly stopped attacking the important thing directly. They attack the unimportant thing that happens to touch the important thing. And those connective tissues, the vendors, the plugins, the auto-tracking apps, the open-source library nobody maintains anymore, the AI assistant you invited into your codebase last Tuesday, those have multiplied beyond anyone's ability to count, let alone defend. Look across the recent news, and the pattern is almost monotonous once you see it. A prediction market loses $3 million not because its own servers fell, but because a third-party vendor's code was injected into the page your browser loaded. The education sector is learning a costly lesson in vendor risk. Attackers there have stopped bothering with the schools and gone after the edtech suppliers, because why break into 1,000 schools when you can break into the one company that serves all 1,000? Malicious packages worm their way through the NPM ecosystem and into Go, riding the supply chain like a virus through a bloodstream. The lesson keeps arriving in different costumes. Your security is now a function of the security of everything you depend on, and you depend on far more than you think, and you cannot see most of it. This is the state of the field, and it is worth naming plainly. We have moved from a world of perimeters to a world of relationships. The old question was, is my wall high enough? The new question is, whom do I trust, what do they trust, and what do the things they trust in turn? That question has no clean answer, and the discomfort of that is, I'd argue, the defining anxiety of cybersecurity in this moment. And then, as if the dependency problem weren't dizzying enough, we have invited a new kind of actor into the relationship, the autonomous agent. An AI coding assistant clones a perfectly clean-looking repository, sets it up obediently, and executes a malicious payload that no scanner, no human reviewer, and no other AI ever sees. A developer's cloud credentials walk out the door because their coding helper trusted a workspace it shouldn't have. These agents inherit permissions, traverse systems, and make decisions at machine speed with almost no oversight, and the identity machinery we built to govern human beings was never designed for them. The connective tissue is no longer just passive vendors and libraries sitting there to be exploited. Some of it now acts on its own, at scale, on our behalf, and occasionally against us. So you will hear a great deal of talk about AI as the new frontier, and it is. But notice that even the AI story is really the dependency story wearing fresher clothes. The agent is just another thing you trust that touches everything important. The squid fleet off Argentina, 2/3 of it under foreign control, that too is a dependency story, a supply chain you didn't realize you'd handed over until someone pointed it out. The pattern is fractal. It scales from a corrupted JavaScript file all the way up to national infrastructure. Meanwhile, the older threats have not politely retired to make room. State intelligence services are patiently phishing the backup recovery keys of secure messaging apps, and note the elegance of that, attacking not the encryption, but the recovery mechanism beside it, the low-value door next to the high-value vault. Forensic tools meant to be withheld from certain governments end up used by them anyway. Kernel exploits go public within a day of disclosure. None of that has gone away. It has simply been joined by a faster, stranger set of problems. So here is the argument I want to make across our time together. The field is undergoing a quiet shift in its center of gravity, from defending things to governing relationships and identities, human and now machine. In the segments ahead, I want to follow that shift, first into how attackers have industrialized the exploitation of trust, and then into what a serious response actually looks like, beyond buying another box with a blinking light. But it starts with that leaked passport and the uncomfortable truth it whispers, that your weakest link is almost never the one you were guarding. Let me tell you what I think is actually happening underneath all of this, because if you only watch the surface, you'll see what looks like a great profusion of unrelated calamities. A Russian phishing campaign chasing Signal accounts. A clean-looking code repository that quietly hands malware to an obliging AI assistant. Prediction market losing $3 million because of someone else's broken vendor. A million passports spilling out of all things, a cannabis dispensary's identity check. It reads like chaos. It is not chaos. It is a single deep current, and the current is this. We have spent 30 years building a world of delegation, and the attackers have noticed that the thing worth attacking is no longer the wall, but the act of handing over the keys. Consider what these stories have in common. The Russian operators chasing Signal users did not break the encryption. Signal's cryptography is, by all accounts, perfectly sound. They asked. They sent a fake support message and coaxed people into surrendering their backup recovery key, and the cruelty of it is that the key keeps working. You hand it over once, and you have not merely lost a conversation, you have lost your history and your future in a single gesture. There is no wall here that failed. The owner opened the door because they were asked nicely by something that wore the costume of legitimacy. That is the shape of the whole thing. The vulnerability is not technical. It is the moment of trust being transferred from one party to another. Now watch the same pattern climb up the ladder of abstraction. An AI coding agent is told to clone a repository and set it up. The repository looks benign, clean to the scanners, clean to the human reviewer, clean to the agent itself, and yet the act of setting it up runs the payload. The Amazon developer assistant could be made to execute commands and steal cloud credentials because a developer opened a repository and with one human click, trusted the workspace. In both cases, the human or the agent did exactly what they were designed to do. They delegated. They extended their authority outward into something they had not personally inspected, because inspecting everything is precisely the labor we built these tools to spare us. The convenience and the wound are the same motion. This is why I keep returning to the passport story, because it is the whole argument in miniature. A passport is a high-value credential, the gold standard of identity, and it was being used to verify customers at a cannabis dispensary, a low-stakes errand. The dispensary's verification system was the weak vessel, and when it broke, the high-value credential poured out through the crack. We took our most precious key and lent it to our least defended lock. That is delegation gone feral. Every time you let a serious credential do a trivial job, you have quietly tied the strength of the strong thing to the weakness of the weak thing. And here is where the current accelerates, because we are now delegating not just to vendors and to software, but to autonomous agents that act at machine speed with minimal oversight. The identity infrastructure we built was designed to govern humans who pause, who tire, who can be phoned and asked, "Are you sure?" An agent inherits permissions, traverses systems, and executes decisions while you are getting your coffee. The honest people in this field have started speaking of guardian agents and of turning identity into the primary control plane, and one of the larger vendors has gone shopping for exactly that capability. They have understood the deep current correctly. If the attack surface is now the act of delegation itself, then the discipline that matters is governing who or what may act on your behalf, and how far, and for how long, and with what ability to be revoked. Notice the quiet wisdom in the detail that the signal recovery key keeps working. The failure of modern systems is rarely a single dramatic breach. It is a standing grant of authority that nobody remembered to withdraw. The SIM-swapping gang in Poland, the order-tracking app turned into a phishing vector, the education sector bleeding student data through its software suppliers, these are all the same story told in different dialects. Trust was extended, and then it was never reeled back in. So the deep current beneath the noise is not that attackers got cleverer, though they did. It is that we built an economy of borrowed authority, agents acting for us, vendors acting for vendors, credentials standing in for people, and we built almost none of the machinery to watch those borrowings, to bound them, to retire them when they have done their work. The wall was always the wrong metaphor. The real question of this decade is not how high you build, but how carefully you keep account of every door you have already voluntarily opened. Hold that thought, because it changes entirely what we ought to be doing about it. There's a temptation, when you survey a week's worth of incidents like these, to read each one as a discrete misfortune. A flaw here, a phishing campaign there, a leaked database somewhere else. But the more rewarding exercise, and the more unsettling one, is to ask what these stories share at the structural level. What second-order forces are pressing on them? Because once you start looking, the same few shapes keep recurring, and they tell you a good deal about where we're headed. Consider the first shape, which I'd call the displacement of trust onto soft surfaces. Russian intelligence services, we learn, have refined their campaign against secure messaging, and the refinement is telling. They're no longer merely after the account. They've added a step, coaxing the target into surrendering the backup recovery key. Hand it over once, and the attacker reads your entire history and keeps reading. The cryptography of the application itself was never breached. The maths held. What gave way was the human ritual built around it, a fake support message, a moment of helpfulness, a key offered up. The same lesson arrives, almost comically, in the matter of the million leaked passports. A high-value credential, the passport, and where did it spill from? An identity check for cannabis dispensaries, a trivial, low-stakes system holding a document of profound consequence. The pattern is consistent. We are very good at hardening the center and almost criminally negligent about the periphery. And attackers, being rational, go to the periphery. They go to the support text, the order-tracking app stuffed with fake receipts, the third-party vendor whose breach drains $3 million from a prediction market. The hardened core is increasingly beside the point, which brings me to the second shape, and it's the one I'd ask you to watch most closely, the arrival of the autonomous actor as a first-class participant in our systems and the absence of any governance worthy of the name. We have AI coding agents that will cheerfully clone a repository, trust the workspace, and execute a payload invisible to scanners, to other agents, and to the human nominally supervising. We have a flaw in a developer assistant that let a malicious repository run commands and walk off with cloud credentials, the path described, rather chillingly, as short. And we have the broader recognition, dawning across the industry, that the identity infrastructure built to govern human access was never designed for entities that traverse systems and make decisions at machine speed. The talk now is of guardian agents, of turning identity into the primary control plane, of acquiring whole companies to bolt non-human identity onto the security stack. That scramble tells you the gap is real. We deployed the autonomous workforce first and asked how to govern it second. That ordering capability before control is the recurring sin of this domain, and it never ends well. The third shape is more sociological, and it offers a thread of consolation. Note the quiet correction happening around what these tools can actually do. Confidence in autonomous penetration testing is falling. Companies are experimenting less, not more. And the predicted extinction of the entry-level analyst hasn't materialized. Instead, the machine eats the repetitive labor and leaves a premium on human judgment. The agent monitors, controls, and flags evidence gaps. The person decides what the gap means. This is the equilibrium we should hope for and watch to see whether it holds, not replacement, but the elevation of discernment. The danger is that we mistake the convenience of automation for the soundness of automation and quietly stop checking. The market, for once, seems to be self-correcting on that point. And the fourth shape is the long horizon, where decisions made for reasons of cost and convenience curdle into strategic exposure. Consider the deadline to migrate cryptography ahead of quantum capability, expensive, complex, snarled by multi-vendor environments and update cycles that never line up. Consider the millions of Windows 10 machines whose free security support has just been extended again, because the alternative millions of orphaned devices is unthinkable. Consider the open-source projects aging past their maintainers and the new efforts simply to keep them secure as they decay. None of these is a breach today. Each is a structural liability accruing interest. And here I'd ask you to remember the squid fleet Chinese companies controlling 2/3 of Argentina's own boats. That is not a cybersecurity story, and yet it is precisely the cybersecurity story. Dependence built quietly, commercially, until one morning you discover that the thing you assumed was yours answers to someone else. So what does it all mean? It means the frontier of risk has moved from the algorithm to the arrangement, from what we can compute to what we have come to trust, depend upon, and stop watching. Watch the soft surfaces. Watch the agents we've loosed without leashes. Watch the dependencies we acquired for a song. The breach, when it comes, will not be a failure of mathematics. It will be a failure of attention. That's the signal for today. The noise will keep coming. We'll keep finding what's underneath it. This has been Signal Ahead with Alfred. Until next time.